today. We need to do a bit of a sound check situation for our siblings who are on the whatever this is that's happening up here by teams, but on the team meeting.
Yep, we can hear you, Bishop.
I
Say it
can.
again, Zach.
Yep, we can hear you, Bishop. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great.
There's Zach. Hi, Zach. Good morning, Zach.
Hello, good morning.
All right, are you gonna watch the chat, like when we get to question and answers and all that good stuff?
Yep, I'll keep an eye on the chat.
That's great. Thank you. Excellent. I've asked Father Stephen to open us with a prayer.
Yeah, well, maybe, so that they, Zach wants to.
The Lord be with you.
No, so it's you.
Almighty and everlasting God, from whom cometh every good and perfect gift. Send down upon our bishops and other clergy and upon the congregations committed to their charge, helpful spirit of thy grace. That they may truly please thee, pour upon them the continual dew of thy blessing. Grant this, O Lord, for the honor of our advocate and mediator, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Oh, you're-
Well, good morning. It's so great to be. I'm gonna start crying. That's wild. I want to just start with a bunch of gratitude. This has been an amazing weekend. I don't know what it's been like for you all, but my hope for the consecration was that all these people who I've had the privilege of either loving or being loved by, would be able to gather together as an example to everybody else, everyone who was there, would be an example even to ourselves of the extraordinary grace of God's kingdom. And it for me, we did it. It was absolutely incredible. And I am so grateful for everyone who had a part to play. It occurred to me, John, where's John? There he is. Somebody's mentioned to me that it was 2 years almost from the consecration weekend from when you all started talking to Brian about the service. Does that sound right? And so I think that is an amazing thing to consider, that for 2 years, this work has been ongoing. And really, honestly, the more I talk to people, God has been bringing us, this diocese and myself, to this place for decades. And so what an incredible moment of hope and opportunity to realize that we are part of a much larger story that God is still writing and working on for our communities and in this particular place. So I would love to start listing all the names of all the people, and that would take our full 2 hours. And I would still forget someone. But I want to make sure Anne hears me say that the flowers were absolutely, I don't even know if she's there. It's like we're looking at her floor and her ceiling. But the flowers were exactly what I imagined they might be. And they were just amazing. And I'm really grateful. And I'm very aware that there were a lot of people who did a lot of work that went completely unnoticed and maybe even unvalued. And so for those who planted plants in the yard, who there were, the leaf blowers were going, I think on Friday, God forbid we have leaves on the ground. I know that Angie and her team worked really hard at the cathedral to make sure everybody had what they needed. And that's just a small example of the many people whose hands and hearts went into this weekend. So thank you. And I want to thank you for giving up your time on a Tuesday when I'm sure you had other things and other places planned today for coordinating your calendar so that we could gather here together. I know that some of our fellow siblings in ministry are not able to join us today. So we just want to have a lot of fun so that they feel really jealous later. And exactly. I have a list of things for us to work through or to at least think about. I can't imagine that we'll cover everything, although if you know me, you know I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best. The first thing I want to spend our time on is you. The clergy of the diocese are my top priority because nothing else matters if we are not well and we're not in community and relationship with one another. So I want to just spend some time hearing from you all what you need, and particularly right now, like what are your most immediate needs? And then let's think a little bit far out. So I'm going to give you some data and Joe's going to help me. And then once we get through that bit, I want to hear what your questions are. We might, or your thoughts or your needs are. We might not get to all of them, but we want to at least start collecting that information and figuring out how I can respond or we as a diocese can respond. So a few things I want you all to know. Joe, we have a clergy retreat that the deans have been planning. Could you, I'm gonna give this to you, would you tell everybody what they need to know, please?
Good morning. So you'll all get an email, and sorry about the sort of last or late notice on this, but as you all know, we can't go back to Conception Abbey for clergy retreat. So first, our clergy gathering, we're not calling it clergy retreat because that puts an idea in our minds that I think we're removing. So our clergy conference for the fall will be the dates will be October 26th through October 29th. You'll get an email telling you all this, but this is the first chance since all the consecration blessings that, you know, I didn't want more information to be lost in all the information. So October 26th through the 29th, and we will be at Stone Castle Hotel and Conference Center in Branson, Missouri. And the hotel is like right next door to all the go-kart tracks and all the things. So we'll have some fun this year. So that's all I will tell you right now. We'll get you all the other detailed information later. Thanks.
Thank you. We are talking about having a speaker come to that conference to really talk about self-care for clergy. I don't mean self-care like, I mean, it could be a massage if that's what you want. This is more like things for having someone who's, I've had like a cup and a half of coffee, so my brain is moving faster than my mouth. For example, someone I talked to about coming is an ordained minister in the Presbyterian community and also a licensed therapist. And she has done some great work with clergy in things that we can do for our own selves that align with systemic health. So again, not just like, yes, you need to, you know, do the things you need to do to take care of yourself, get good rest, those sorts of things. But also like other things that she works with clergy on specifically. So we'll see if that comes together. Thank you, Joe. Another thing that I am thinking a lot about is our bivocational siblings. There's more coming, right? The folks that are coming up to be ordained, that are able to stay in the diocese are going to be bivocational folks. So I kind of floated the idea about adding an additional clericus, which would be a bivocational clericus. So they would gather, they wouldn't be a separate deanery. They would have their own opportunities to gather and be able to support one another, because what they're doing is, I think, really different, right? They can support each other and they can advocate for one another in a way that we full-time clergy have a different, it's just a different scenario. It's a different life. So I just want y'all to know that that's something that I've mentioned to them and they seem to be pretty excited about. And so I'm hopeful we'll get that going in the next 6 months. So let me say that triggers in my head something else, which is I don't foresee making any policy changes for at least a year. And so let's talk about visitations for a moment. I would like for my very first visit in your place to really reflect what your place is, your context. And so if I come in and say, well, this is how I want it to be, that doesn't give me an opportunity to really know how it actually is, right? So for this first year and these first visitations, when we have our pre-visitation meeting, Galen said, well, what questions do you have, Bishop? And I said, well, I've never done this before. So what kind of questions should I be asking? So what I want to know in that pre-visitation meeting is what is going to be most helpful for you? What do you need from your bishop coming into your context? What do your people need to hear? What do you need me to tell your people? Right? So feel free to kind of boss me around a little bit in that way. I might, or at least ask for what you need. Everybody has the right to ask for what they need. If I can't do it, then we'll have a conversation about why I can't do it. But I'm going to at least do my best to accommodate you and your community. So please tell me what you need and how I can be a support to you in your place. Now, a year from now, we might be having a conversation about tiny cups, for example. Do you know what I mean by tiny cups? Okay, we're not going to have that conversation today. And we're not the only diocese that has an issue. Do you know what I mean by tiny cups? Some of our communities are still distributing communion with tiny cups.
Oh.
And so I don't mean to be snarky about it. I just need to say that, like, I'm giving you a heads up now that in a year, if your community is one of those places that's using tiny cups, you might need to start talking to them about how that needs to come to an end. But we're not going to get into that today, unless you need help having that conversation, in which case get on my calendar and let's have a conversation about why it's going to come to an end, right? But I'm not going to come in on my first visitation with your community and say to them, tiny cups, right? But that's just an example of things that I'm going to discover that are happening in our communities and in your context that I'm going to need some time to think about as well, right? And let me be clear, about 3 months ago, my class of bishops, there's 6 of us, had a meeting with Jeff Lee, where he was like talking to us about our hats and our sticks and so forth and so on. And I'm the baby of my class, and so I was like, what are they discovering in their places? And it was another one of my classmates who, in her visitations over the last, months, has discovered that there are a lot of places using tiny cups. And I thought, really? Oh, well, that won't be the case in West Missouri. I was wrong. Fine to say I'm wrong. It's fine. I would like to know, let's start with maybe a simple question. Does anybody have a strong opinion about how often you would like to be meeting as a large diocesan clergy group? Is one conference in the fall enough? Or there's a no. Would you like to bring back the spring retreat? There's a couple yeses. Anybody who's like, absolutely not, I don't want a spring retreat. Okay, yes?
What are your expectations for attendance?
That's a great question, and you're not the first person to ask. So Stephen wants to know what's my opinion about attendance. So I was just saying to Ron that I perceive my leadership as being more of a permissive rubric than a non-permissive rubric. Does that make sense? So I like to think that I'm flexible and adaptable, like an oak tree, not like bamboo. I think it's really important that we be together. That's how we, as the community of leaders in the diocese, are going to help the system move more and more towards healthy functionality and relationally. Is if we're sitting in a room together, having fun and having hard conversations. I'll come back. Hold on just a second. So I would say that at least one conference a year, whether it's the retreat or the conference, will be mandatory. And then I would suggest that everything else will be flexible and adaptable. And certainly convention is mandatory. And so if you're not going to be able to be at those things, I would like to know ahead of time why, and then work through whatever that reality might be. For example, I missed a convention because I had a baby. Right? I mean, yeah, right, exactly. I think at least once we need to be committed to all being together, gathering together, especially because of so much can happen in an hour, let alone what can happen in a year. And so we're going to have clergy who are going to leave. We're going to have clergy who are going to come among us. We're going to have lots of things are going to happen. And so at least once a year, we need to be committed to being together, getting to know each other so that we can support each other best.
My concern about retreat or convocation is that they're very different things. And so, at least in my mind, and I think part of what we've struggled with as a diocese is that, although I think it's lovely when we do retreat together, retreat brings to mind, spiritual practices, what kinds of things bring us close to God. I think probably for all of us, that's very individual. There are some things, of course, we do together that are lovely. I'm thinking of the walk up to the Mary's Grotto, at the monastery down at the Abbey. That was always a highlight for the retreat for me. But by the same token, in the convocation, I get more of this sense of we're coming together to share needs, concerns, where we're going as a diocese, your vision as our bishop. I just see them as very different things. And so in my own mind, I feel like convocation, yeah, we need to be there. The retreat, arguably, some might argue that I can do that better on my own, doing my own thing. So I guess that's
no, we're on the same page about that. I agree. And I guess let's talk a little bit about my expectations of what you're doing for your own self. Because if you're depending on me to accommodate you, making sure that you have what you need so that you can be healthy and have what you need, I'm not going to be able to do that for you. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility is me. I have to take care of myself. And then everybody else, I'm going to do my best, right? I have 3 children, so it's a lot of practice at saying that's not my business. You got to figure that out, right? So I do expect our clergy to be regularly practicing a daily practice of prayer and some kind of scripture study. Now, I've been a full-time priest in a large parish. I know that scripture study means writing a sermon every week, right? So I'm not going to get into the weeds of like how you're doing your scripture study or leading a Bible study for your community. I am saying that if there's ever been a time in our culture when we needed to be biblically athletic, now's the time. Now's the time. We need to be able to have really hard conversations about biblical concepts and realities. I'm going to give you an example. If you go through on the Book of Faces, Facebook, and you look at any of the postings about the consecration on the weekend, I've looked at about 5 of them. Every single one of them, there is someone saying her consecration is invalid because she is a woman. Every single one of them has people making those comments. And some of the people who love me the most in the world are like engaging with them. They're like, you don't know her. I'm like, that's really sweet, but please, right? This is not the place to have that conversation, right? The place to be having that conversation is in our communities, building more biblical athletes who, when they're having conversations in their personal relationships, and someone says to them, how can you have a woman as your primary leader in your community? They can say, well, we did a study on 1 Timothy, and this is what we learned. Have you studied 1 Timothy? let's study it together, right? So we need to be biblical athletes so that we can coach our people into being biblical athletes, right? And it's not just about women's ordination. I'm talking about Christian nationalism, right? So we can either give over biblical authority to those folks who are using scripture to mandate how we live together in our country, or we can be our own biblical athletes running that race alongside our siblings and frankly converting them to right. Yeah. Okay, so I'm expecting you to be studying the Bible, saying your prayers every day, and making the time to go on retreat. Now, what does that look like, Bishop? It looks like whatever it is that you have the capacity to make happen for yourself. All right. So that changes in our seasons of life. When I had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, a retreat did not look like going away for a weekend once a month. That would have looked like a divorce. Right? So so I had to figure out a way within my own schedule. Within it, I was serving a large congregation at the time. I had 1,000 families I was expected to care for and respond to their pastoral needs. I'm not saying it's easy at all. In fact, I'm saying if you're having a hard time making that happen, ask for help. And when I say ask for help, my name's Amy, and I'm a bishop, and I care deeply about you. And so, if you're having a hard time figuring out how to live into this expectation that I'm giving you, then come and talk to me about it, and let's wrestle about it and figure out how we can make sure you get what you need, right? So for me, what that looks like right now is I'm going to reinstitute my every 6-week retreat. I talked a little bit about these at the meet and greets. I had a community of priests that I was with in Arkansas, and we would gather for 3 hours in the morning at one of our local churches, and we would pray together, and we would just work in silence alongside one another, whatever retreat meant for each of us. So sometimes for me, that was like working on my sermon spreadsheet. Other times that meant sitting in the church for a couple of hours in silence. There was a labyrinth there. The place where we met was right by the Arkansas House of Prayer. So some people would go and be there for a few hours. And then at the end of those hours, we would pray together again and be on our way. So I'm reinstituting those for myself. And I don't have a clue what that's going to look like here, right? Because I don't have a community of bishops to gather on retreat with. It's me, myself, and I, which is great. I like myself. However, if that's a practice that you would like to practice and you would like some accountability, I'm happy to share that practice with you. What matters most is that you are figuring out what it is you need to do for yourself so you can get some time to be on retreat, whatever the word retreat might mean for you. Which brings me to other things that I think are really, really important. Spiritual direction, really important. Therapy, really important. Some kind of coaching, really important. Now, those things, they can cost money, and right, like that can be a problem, that can be complicated. And they're not, I've been ordained for 23 years. Were there years of my life when I wasn't going to therapy? Yes. Are those the best years of my life? No. But there's always the opportunity, right, to continue to do the work, even if the work itself ends up being on the back burner, right? However, if what I'm saying to you is resonating with you and you need help finding a spiritual director or a therapist, or you're curious about what it would be like to have a coach, I have all three. I'd be more than happy to talk about that with you and help you discern how you can do those things in your own life, in your own ministry. I will also say that I really don't like surprises. I don't like surprise parties. I don't like surprise gifts. My husband will tell you that he went through a phase where he would send me flowers occasionally. And I finally was like, either something is wrong or you need to stop. Because this is stressing me out. And so he's never sent me flowers again. That's on me. So I just really don't like surprises. And so there's something going on with you. I don't really, it doesn't matter to me what it is. If something is going on with you, please share it with me. Now, obviously, we're boundary ninjas, right? You're not going to share everything with me. But I'm taking a little bit of a turn here because I think it's important. Title 4, if you have not read Title 4 in the Constitutions and Canons, I implore you to go and read it. It is boring. Don't read it when you're laying in bed. You will fall asleep. Read it first thing in the morning or whenever you're most awake during the day. Sit with it and read it. No questions about it. Call me. I'll talk with you about it. But please know that we are living in a culture. Well, Title 4, it gives people a lot of freedom to take out their anxiety and their frustration and their fear on us. My colleague in Virginia, in his tenure as bishop, has had 56 Title 4s brought to him in his diocese. These are the disciplinary canons. The particular issue in Title 4 is I don't remember what letter it is. It's like the last letter. It's like letter H. Conduct unbecoming a priest.
What?
So when I was being ordained, consecrated on Saturday, I don't know about you all, but I heard the words wholesome example 3 times. And there were some people in that room who have known me for a really long time. And I thought, please don't let them define what wholesome example is. Right? Like just belching in public, is that a wholesome example? And that's the funny thing, right? There was someone, there are people in our communities who are waiting, who are looking for opportunities to show us what our conduct should be. And once it goes into a Title 4, my ability to care for you and protect you is almost out the window. Now, is that the way it should be? It is not the way it should be, 100%. And the House of Bishops is talking about it, and this is something Sean Rowe is working on, but changes to the constitutions and canons takes multiple general conventions, right? So for now, this is what we have. And I would just much prefer you to come to me and let's work through whatever the thing is together before it ends up in Barbara Wegner's hands through the disciplinary board. And so let me tell you a few things that I hope to be able to work on as fast as possible. The first is training about Title 4. My colleague, Michael Hunn, in the Diocese of Rio Grande, this is something, did I say that right? Rio Grande? Rio Grande, not Grande. Diocese of Rio Grande. The Diocese of Rio Grande, he and his team have put together a role-playing game around Title 4, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to use some version of that to help train our folks. And frankly, I would love to play it at Clergy. This is not Stephen King's. He's not. You're not interested. But if you think, I think it's an interesting way to talk through how these realities come to pass. Can I tell you a personal story? Would that be okay? Do you have anywhere else you need to? So I was serving at Trinity Church in Danville, Kentucky. I can't remember how long I had been there. And I had a chalice bearer who served at the 8 o'clock service. It was kooky. I loved him, right? Because he loved the Lord, probably still does. And the city commission of Danville, Kentucky was putting together a fairness ordinance. So the goal of that ordinance was to try to move our community forward in its inclusiveness around particularly LGBTQ folks. And Aaron didn't like that, made him afraid. And he didn't tell me he didn't like it. This is how I knew he didn't like it. He went to the city commission meeting and he told them that if they passed the fairness ordinance, he would come to the next city commission meeting with a gun. How do I know that he did that? It was recorded and other parishioners were there and sent me the recording. So I knew that it had happened within like a span of an hour that it had happened. Chalice bearers are our companions at the altar, right? And they are sent forth into the community as our priestly representatives with the sacraments. And I'm a pacifist. I've never held a gun. I have no desire to hold a gun. I recognize that when the apocalypse happens, that might mean I'm one of the first to go. Like, thanks be to God, I'm going to see my Lord and Savior. But I have no need to hold a gun. And so I got up the next morning. Now, I want to be clear, there are things I could have done differently. But when you don't have practice at something, the only way to learn is to make a mistake. So I'm not saying I didn't make mistakes. I'm just telling you the story of what happened. So I called Aaron and I said, I'd like for you to come in and see me. And he said, why? It's a right to know. And I said, well, I've seen a recording of what happened at the city commission meeting, and you and I are now in conflict with one another, and I would like to have an opportunity to talk about that. Well, you can just tell me what you need to tell me right now. And I said, okay, well, I don't think that's our best way forward. Are you sure? Yes. Okay. I'm inviting you to take a sabbatical as a chalice bearer. And I'd like for you and I to spend some time over the next few months getting to know each other better and talking through the conflict that you feel that you have, the public conflict that it's clear that you have with our city commission. I'm not doing that. I quit. And he hung up the phone, and I thought, well, that's it. It was not it. He filed a Title IV against me, demanding that I resign, and even more, he filed a Title IV against my bishop, demanding he resign because the bishop should have never allowed me to be a priest anyway. That Title IV took at least 6 months to be resolved, even though the bishop for the Pastoral Development Office, when he called me, said, this seems crazy. It was, right? But there was really nothing, it was outside of anybody's hands. Even as I'm calling the bishop to say, this is what just happened, right? Because the Title IV allows for anyone to file a Title IV against any of us. So I'm just saying, right, the next right thing for me to do when Aaron hung up the phone was for me to call my bishop and say, I just need you to know that this just happened. Thanks be to God I did that, because he wasn't surprised, right, when the Title IV landed on his intake officer's desk. What I learned from that was to call my bishop, although I will tell you that I forgot that I could trust my bishop. I've had some really negative experiences with bishops. I'm probably the only one in the room who's ever had a negative experience with bishops. And 2018, our treasurer of our congregation was diagnosed with a horrible, I can never remember, it was leukemia or lymphoma, blood cancer. It was devastating. She was diagnosed on a Friday. She was in isolation by the following Wednesday. Her children and my children were best friends. We had been in ministry together for a really long time. I trusted Jennifer. She counted all of our money. And I went into her office because now I had to run payroll and pay the bills. right? And she had not filed a piece of paper for a year. And I knew that this was a problem. And I called John, sobbing, I'm going to get fired. I don't know what's happened here. Because it wasn't just about my bishop, right? It was about the parish that had entrusted me in my relationship with Jennifer. And the boundaries had gotten all wonky, right? Because our families were so close. And I just trusted she was doing her job. I wasn't really supervising her. And now all of a sudden, my vestry wants to know why none of the financial paperwork has been filed for a year. I called John, I was like, what am I going to do? He was like, you need to call your bishop. And I think I even said, I'm afraid. And he was like, you still have to call your bishop. He couldn't go with me because, I don't know if y'all know this, but he's busy over here in Kansas City. But I did. I called with the bishop and I said, I need to come see you. I'm really afraid. And I'm afraid to tell you, and I'm embarrassed about what I've discovered. And, luckily, I had a wonderful bishop at the time who really offered me pastoral care, and we made our way forward. I say all that to say, I know that my capital right now with you all is really high. And so I'm going to do my very best to respond as pastorally as I know how. It won't always be great. But I promise I'm going to do my best. And we're going to make our way forward, and we're going to learn from our mistakes, and we're going to keep doing the next right thing. And sometimes the next right thing is just knowing that you have to get out of bed in order to go get ready for the day, right? We're gonna break it down in the smallest bits of pieces as we can, and we're gonna do it together. And again, I'm gonna make mistakes, but we have to be in it together, right? I'm trusting you to call me when you need help, and if you break that trust, it's gonna get beyond our ability. It might get beyond our ability. It doesn't mean we can't go back and try again. All right. All right. I've just talked for a long time. So let's take a moment. Let's pulse of the room. How's everybody doing? Are you bored yet? Okay. What questions or things are popping up for you that you want to make sure are on our radar or on my radar to talk about?
Bishop, I have a couple questions in the comments.
Okay.
The first one is from Father Larry. He asked what about clergy continuing education? Father Larry, do you want to elaborate?
It came up when Bishop was talking about her expectations. So however you want to expand that is fine by me. And it's about accountability, I think.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. You should just please keep learning. And it was one of my seminary professors who said, when a priest has stopped learning based on the most recent book that's sitting on their shelf. And so now I carry my Kindle around, so you guys have no idea. Although, I don't know if y'all know this, but on Kindles, when you turn them off, it shows the cover of the most recent book you were reading. And gotta be careful. Yes, please keep learning. And if you do a learning that gets you a certificate, and you would like to share that certificate with me, excellent. That the reward will be that your bishop will be like, well, yeah, some of our clergy are getting certificates in contemplative prayer, for example. So yes, please keep learning. And I will tell you, it may not, obviously I think you should be studying the Bible, reading theology, right? Yes, those are things that should be happening. And one of the best things I did for my own ministry was teach myself how to knit. It helps me stay creative, right? It reminds me how to meditate and how to pray, and it connects me to other people. So yes, I think you should be reading your Bible. Yes, I think you should be reading theology. Yes, I think you should be praying and learning about prayer and teaching about prayer, and also stay creative, whatever your creativity might be. The best thing my husband does for himself is go out and ride a bike for about an hour every day. I mean, if he didn't do that, I might kill him. He certainly would kill me. And so, those practices are part of our continuing process of learning. And you ought to be taking a class or studying. I'm hopeful that you all have 2 weeks or at least a week of continuing education in your letters of agreement. If not, yes, Chaz is shaking his head. Yes, should be. So that can result in a variety of ways. I'll give you an example. There's a great place in Northwest Arkansas called Hezekiah House. They have 4 hermitages on their property. They offer spiritual direction to anybody who comes and stays on their property. There's acres and acres and acres of hiking available, and they have a library, right? So you could go there for a week at for a couple $100. And if you need help with that, you're going to call your bishop, right? And you could go and read and hike and pray and worship with them. They're the Catholic priest, they're Catholic sisters. The Catholic priest who comes to them will serve you communion. And so it's a very open and inclusive place, and they want to support clergy. So that's just an example of something you could do that checks the box of continuing education. Does that answer your question, Larry?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thanks. All right, Zach, what else have we got?
Mother Susan has her hand raised.
Yeah, it's a tag on to Larry's question. So this conversation had come up during in COM, and there had been some conversation about clergy sending some kind of report to the diocese for our file about what we had done for continuing education that year. Is that something that you would like us to do, or?
I would love it if you would do that. Again, remember I said at the very beginning, I'm not changing any policy for a year. So let's see how the year goes. If I find out that people are not taking their continuing education time, then yeah, it might turn into a thing where you have to show me that you checked the box. We're all grown-ups in the room, right? Is it a policy? Oh, John, that's great. I'm glad you're here. It's not been enforced. Am I going to be the enforcer? I think so. Absolutely. If that's the policy, that's what we're doing. And so if you feel like so let's back up for a second, because somebody's heart just started beating really hard because they've not been following that policy. It's okay. We're all going to be okay. No one's getting fired, right? Like, I'm not the enforcer, right? I'm like, oh, well, what can I do to help you so that you can take some time to be able to do this thing that's going to help you grow as to more and more to the person who God is calling you to be. And the policy's there for a reason. Yes.
It would be helpful, at least to me, you're still relatively new at Outskirts Parish. If maybe what the policies are would be established before we talk about whether they're gonna be changed or not. Meaning, I think I was aware of that one, John, but it's been a long time. So how do I know that? Like, I don't think. I appreciate that it's on the website. That's always the answer that I get when I raise these questions on this diocese, but I happen to like not just what people on the website all of the time. My point is it would be really helpful to know what the expectations are before we know whether we're doing them or not, and then, I mean, I appreciate your permissive rubric answer, but also like, can we also know?
Yes, absolutely, we can know the rules, because you can't play a game if you don't know how to, the rules, not that this is a game, that metaphor didn't go well. So what Zach and I are gonna do is he's gonna help me, we're gonna find those policies, and I'm gonna send them out with a pastoral letter. Okay, James?
I think just to build on that, not just know the policy, but to know what the actual process I'm supposed to do, to let you know that I'm following those policies would be, like, when do I need to send this in, and by what means am I going to send it in, sort of thing. Would be great.
I like smoke signals.
I'll work on that.
All right, Joe?
Yeah, so I think part of this conversation is, hey, we just don't know, even if we did know to turn it in, we don't know who to turn it into. And so I guess kind of the question I've got is, and I know, you've done this job now as bishop for 2 days, but has there been any thought on your end of having a candidate to the ordinary, or somebody like that in your office again, that we can communicate all this stuff to? Just because in the past, Diane got there and she's very clear, Diane is very clear about, well, I'm going to be that person. And while I think that was a noble task, right, I think the reality of running a diocese is, as bishop, is you don't have time for all of that. So we should have somebody else to go through this.
Well, thank you. for
Hey,
that,
Bishop.
Joe. Yes.
Could you go ahead and repeat the question? Some people in the chat can't hear very well.
Absolutely. It just cost $1. Do you have $1? Okay, so the question that Joe is bringing up is really, who's gonna help me, Bishop Amy, keep track of all of these things? Am I gonna have a canon to the ordinary, for example? And that we give thanks to Diane for her willingness to try to be all things to all people. So for now, I would say, that I'm depending on Father Chaz and on Emily to make sure that we have what we need in people's files. Now, Chaz is part-time, and which means he's full-time for the diocese, and he's full-time for St. Aug's, right? So that's sustainable for it's probably past sustainability. So I am trying to discern what staffing at a diocesan level is going to look like. And those questions are also going to come to diocesan council, right? Because they're going to impact the budget, right? Another example is that Anne has a quarter-time position plus, which means she's working half-time for the diocese, right? And also a full-time job, right? So that's past its sustainability probably a year ago. And I'll be really honest, Emily's underpaid. We know that. Not only because Emily is who Emily is, but because if Emily were to leave and we had to replace her, we'd be replacing her at a higher dollar than what she's currently receiving. So you just take the person out of it. So we're doing a salary study right now. Try and help me get that started before she left. So we're going to have some data to work on as a diocesan council. So for now, things are going to stay as they are. And I'm depending on Chad and Emily to keep track of y'all's files. My hope is that in the next 12 to 18 months, we will have a greater number of full-time and part-time staff members on the diocesan staff who will be coordinating those efforts. So I'll be working on job descriptions and goals and strategies for how we want to move forward. I don't have a strategy today, Joe, because I've been doing the job for like 3 days, right? But I actually have been doing the job longer, right? I mean, I know that too, but I'm just saying, like, I have had the wonderful grace of being able to observe how things have worked in the office, which is a huge gift, right? And I also know how I lead and like what I expect from a staff team. But I'm also realizing that what I was doing as a dean or a rector is different from what is expected of me as a bishop. And so I've got to figure out what I need so that I can be the best bishop that I'm being called to be. And so who's the staff team that's going to surround me? I will tell you this. A friend of mine told me once if I didn't know the answer, I should just say, I don't know. I don't know. And I don't think that I'll have a canon to the ordinary. I don't think that that will be the title. But I don't know. That's what I'm willing to say about that. And 12 to 18 months before we figure that out. Thank you. It's a great question. Hold on, Ted. I just want to make sure. Zach, are there any more from?
Yes, we have a couple more. First, they're
One
both
more,
from,
and then Ted. So we'll do one and one and one and one. We'll go back and forth.
okay. From Father Jonathan. Given that Harvard University might lose its tax-exempt status, is anyone in the Episcopal Church working on how to respond if the government looks at us, especially since we uphold some of the same values of DEI? I believe that was Father Jonathan Frazier.
He's shaking his head, yes. So are you, Jonathan, are you asking about, is somebody looking at us and our DEI policies?
Yes, our DEI policies, I think, might make us a target for whoever would go after Harvard University. I'm just wondering, is there somebody working on a contingency plan in case that comes up?
I'm trusting that, I mean, maybe this is not good trust, but I'm trusting that the Office of Government Relations is watching all of that on our behalf and will let us know if we need to protect ourselves. I personally am hoping that we're flying far enough under the radar, at least right now, that we're going to keep our tax exempt status. I'll tell you, in Arkansas, churches are not tax exempt. So I think, we've had this great privilege of being tax exempt. We've had a wonderful housing allowance. Isn't that lovely? Is it possible those things will go away? I just always figure anything is possible. Does that mean we're going to go in and change any policy that looks like DEI? No, I'm not planning on doing that. It's for a year. That's what I said at the beginning, right? Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, Jonathan, but I would say that's like something I'm not even thinking about right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And you also are asking about my cell phone number.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about this a lot. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to give it to you. I'm not because I don't love you, but because so many people already have my cell phone number. And most of them are in Africa and they're kings. It's amazing how many friends I have that are kings. But this is the number I'm going to give you. So I do have this app on my phone called Zoom. You ever heard of Zoom? And you can call me through that app. And you can leave me a voicemail and you can send me a text message, I think. Is that right, Jess? I think so. So I'm going to give you that number. She says, with hope in her heart. Here it is. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
And Zach, will you type this into the chat so that it's in the chat too, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. It is 816-648-07, extension 114. And that will ring on my phone and it will ring on my computer as well.
Bishop, could you repeat the number? It cut off at the end.
816-648-0587, extension 114.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Father Ted.
Well, this is kind of back ways, but, when I was ordained 17 years ago, I showed up at the diocesan office expecting, because I worked in school districts, to get an orientation where I would find out about insurance, I would find out the policies, continuing ed, and all of that. Did not happen. So I'm hoping that we're doing that now with a fresh start with what cover. But it occurs to me on the continuing ed, it would be possible to do a fillable PDF that would be emailed to everyone, which you can type in. Because for my therapy licenses, I have to list every 2 years all of my continuing ed, some of it formal, some of it books that I've read or studied. And that could be sent out at the same time with the expectation you can fill it out, send it back in, and then there would be this electronic document that could be easily stored.
Well, I think your underlying point, the thing you're not saying that I hear you saying is, can we please make this as simple as possible? And also don't forget to reorient the new people, right? So thank you for that. And yes, I want it to be as simple as possible because I don't know if you've looked at the OTM form recently, but great. We can also talk about broker reports. Wouldn't it be nice if that was an online fillable form that did all the math for you? I was on the no math line, David. Then they're like, average out your Sunday attendance for the year. Thank God. We're at an hour and I have other things for us to talk about. Let's just take a moment again and check in. Think now about things that I haven't talked about yet that you're hoping to hear about. And then I'm going to go through what I have left. And then we're going to do another question and answer time. Does that sound good? Yes.
Just had a good question about your expectation. I know you'll let us know when you went to visit our parishes, but are you going to expect to have a sit down with each and every one of us? Do you want your office to arrange that? Do you want us to call and tell you we would like that to happen?
That's a great question. I found out one of my colleagues recently is following their predecessor, waited for the congregations to ask for a visit. So there were some parishes in that diocese that hadn't had a bishop's visit in like 5 years because the rector had never asked for the bishop to come. We're not doing that. We're a small enough diocese right now. Hopefully we're going to grow, but right now we're a small enough diocese that I should be able to get everywhere within a year. So if I haven't seen you in a year, I'm going to be making a phone call trying to figure out what's going on and why can't we make that work out. 100% Emily is in charge of my schedule. And I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings. But I'm not sorry because here's the thing about me. I do not do details well. Here's the story. My husband and I didn't have children yet, and my husband's from Alaska. And he said, wouldn't it be great to do a 2-week camping trip around Alaska? And I thought, yeah. And so we did. And we got in the car one day. We're going to go camping down in Seward. We were staying in Anchorage, and it's a couple-hour drive. And we're in the car and keep going into these campgrounds, and every single campsite was taken. Everyone. It never happens. We got all the way down to Seward, and all these American flags were out, and people were so festive. And we went to the restaurant, and we were having lunch, and it was like, did you go to the parade? And we're like, wow, was there a parade? Why was there a parade? She goes, it's July the 4th. So that's how I deal with details. We drove back to Anchorage because there was nowhere for us to stay. So Emily's got to be in charge of my calendar, right? So if you need me, you need to see me, call Emily, get on my calendar. She's going to get you in as fast as possible. So here's a couple other important details that I'm working out. We have a contract on the house that's going to allow me to have an in-home office that is Safe Church. Because my husband works at home, y'all, so there's always going to be somebody in my house. So if you come meet me in my house, there's always going to be somebody there, but this office has glass doors. So we can go in, close the door, but it's still safe church, all right? That's Title IV. So I'm hoping that Mondays and Thursdays, I'll be in my home office, which for some of you coming up from, Sedalia, I almost said Salida, Sedalia, or you're coming up from Springfield, you won't have to go all the way downtown to meet with me. Also, we have Zoom, thanks be to God. And so and I am going to be commuting back and forth with Arkansas likely through the end of July, just based on how things are going with my household. So for the next few months, it's going to be like a throwing an arrow at a target. But then after that, we'll have some consistency about how we can meet with one another. And if you need me to come to you, you just tell Emily that, and she'll figure out how to get me on the road, right, so that I can come to where you are. And I want to be meeting not just with you, I want to be meeting with your people, right? So vestry meetings, Wednesday nights, Bible studies. I loved being a parish. I loved being in the parish. And so one gift you can give me is an opportunity to come be in the parish again. I didn't put my name forward because I didn't like being a parish priest. In fact, I'm grieving the loss of that work. And so that's a huge gift that you can give me to connect with people on a real relational basis. So I'm hoping to visit every community every year. I would love to visit with you one-on-one at least once a year. And I would love to visit with your people in addition to those visitations, right, a Sunday morning, within a year. That's a lot of work, right? Joe's like, how's she going to manage her files if she's constantly on the road going to see everybody 3 times a year? I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. But we'll learn, right? I'm going to make some mistakes and we're going to figure it out. But for now, that's in my head what I would really love to be able to do. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. We're small enough that we ought to be able to do something like that. My friend in Massachusetts, she doesn't have that privilege, right? She's got 3 times the number of churches, 189 churches in Massachusetts. They don't get to see their bishop the same way that we don't get to be in a relationship with one another. Let's talk liturgy. I want you to tell me what your context is. Do you like to sing the Eucharist? I love to sing the Eucharist. Do I have to sing the Eucharist? Absolutely not, right? Do you have incense? I love incense. I'm happy to use incense. Do we have to have incense? Absolutely not. Sanctus bells? Oh, they're from the Lord. Do we have to have them every Sunday? Absolutely not. Do you use them? Great. I'm happy to use them. You see where I'm going, right? Like all the things. So you do what makes sense in your community. And one request. Please let me know what that is ahead of time. And here's the thing, I need to go read the policy myself so I know what the policy is. But I'm operating in the assumption that you are not using enriching our worship as your primary principal service. Now, it is possible that in fact, someone is using enriching our worship as their primary principal service. Would you just tell me that ahead of time so that I know? And then we can talk about context. One of my closest friends serves in a community where they use enriching our worship as their principal service every Sunday. Right? But the bishop knows, and they have figured out how to be in relationship with one another, right? Because it's what that church has been doing since Jesus established them, right? So I'm not going to come in and be like, I know you've been doing this for 30 years. It has to stop, right? Joe.
So just following up with that, and I think I know what your answer is, but I'd rather just hear it than I know the answer. But your predecessor, her operational description to us was do first and ask for forgiveness later. Were her words when it came to things like transferring feast days or changing whatever Eucharist we use or whatever. It sounded very much just do whatever you want. What is your expectation on liturgical changes and things like that? I mean,
Well, I mean, I remember the meet and greet, y'all remember this, at every clergy gathering, we were asked some question about the oath of conformity. And the first time we got asked it, I remember vividly, it was at St. Peter and All Saints. And I was really glad I wasn't the first one to answer that question because I was like, what's the oath of conformity? I bet Jimmy's gonna know what that is. He's gonna get that answer. But then, I don't know if y'all noticed, but Saturday I had to actually like write it out, right? Like I had to actually do the oath of conformity again. I had to sign it. And for me, in this newness of my episcopacy, I feel a great responsibility to not be, just to tell you a little bit about how I perceive myself, to not be the young blonde in the room who's messing things up for the House of Bishops, right? Do you see what I mean? Like that's have my own perception of my own self. And so I have a great sense that my newness gives me some capital to make mistakes, but it doesn't give me a lot of capital to like challenge the church, the house on what we're doing, right? And so for now, I'm asking you all to join me in that particular place. And if you're doing something that is not in line with the doctrine and discipline of our church, tell me so that we can figure out how we think about it and talk about it. I'll give you an example. I recently had a priest send me an email wanting to know my thoughts on open communion. Guess what? Not writing my thoughts about open communion in an email. Not even putting it in a text message. I'm probably going to make sure you're not recording me before I say anything. It's Title 4, right? I want to be your bishop for a long time, right? I want to get kicked out of the house because I said something that didn't align with our church. So, I mean, what I just said feels really risky. And so I would just ask that if you think you're doing something that isn't aligning with who we are as a national church, you will call me, don't send me an email, right? Call me and let's talk about it so we can figure out how we're going to move forward. And again, context matters, and you know your context way better than I know your context, at least right now, and probably always. Again, I feel like that's like a vague answer, Joe, but. I love vague answers. Okay. All right. Okay, no surprises. We talked about that. We talked through Title 4. Let's spend a few minutes talking about diocesan priorities. So care for one another in our clergy and care for our people. If there's something going on that I'm really grateful, Tim Coppinger called a couple weeks ago. He knew I was on my way down to Cassville for Easter, and one of their parishioners who has since died, Cheryl Laughlin, went on to her greater glory, was in the hospital, and so he called and let Emily know, and she worked it out so that I could stop and see her in the hospital on my way down to Cassville. So things like that, right? That's also one way that I want to help support you, is knowing the things that are happening in your communities. 2015, I had 15 people die in my parish between January and March. I needed my bishop, right? I needed my bishop to know what was going on. The congregation needed their bishop to know the great sense of loss that was happening in their community. Congregational development. So we had that wonderful opportunity with Melissa Skelton. We're going to keep doing things like that. Chaz and I are going to go do year B. So I never completed year B for the College of Congregational Development this summer. Some of you may be interested in doing the college. I hope that you'll let Chaz or I know that so that we can figure out how we can support you so that you can do that. Now, the College for Congregational Development is not biblical, right? they're doing strong work, and it's some of the best work out there right now, in my humble opinion, regarding congregational development. Are there other ways to be doing congregational development? 100%. So if you're like, well, she wants me to do continuing education, and I'm gonna have to, well, do that, right? The college is expensive, but there are other resources and ways to grow in our skills for developing our communities. And Chad and I can help you find those and resource those to you. I don't know if Chad, I didn't get a chance to ask you this ahead of time. Do you care to do an update about the Faith X reality? Yeah, I would like to.
Okay, so FaithX, CVA, Congregational Vitality Assessment. We launched it originally back in October, I think. And we've had a few hiccups along the way. Mainly, they've had a few hiccups along the way. They decided that they were going to update the way that it's done. And that included their website where all of the links for doing the CVA are. And that was supposed to take a month. So it was going to be like December, January. It ended up taking about 3.5, 4 months. So we are just getting to a place now where we can do surveys again. 20 of our congregations have completed the survey. So we've still got about half of them left to go. And we're in the process of doing the feedback with the parishes that have completed it. There have been a few things that have happened since then with Holy Week and consecration, but we're making it happen slowly but surely. And once those are finished, then we'll really hit the other parishes that haven't completed it yet. And some of our smaller congregations, what that's going to look like is different than what it might look like in a larger parish. For some of our smaller parishes, it's going to look like me just going there and being with them on a Sunday morning and talking to the people and getting a sense of where they are, rather than completing a survey that may not give them helpful information. So we want to make it as pastoral and easy as possible for everybody to be able to participate, not only so we can get information about your particular congregation, but so that we as a diocese know what trends we're facing. Obviously, if you look at the data we have right now, Episcopalians really like how we worship. Not a surprise. Yeah. But they're also worried about internal sustainability. They're seeing the number of their people in the congregation getting older. They're not seeing young families come in, and so they're worried about that. Those aren't just trends that we're facing, those are trends that everybody's facing right now. But there may be other things that come up that we can say, all right, this is an area where we as a diocese need to put some real support around this issue and help our congregations move into a better place.
Do you have any questions about that? James?
I just wanted to plug Shaping the Parish as a very affordable congregational development. It's like $60 for a 2-year program. On Zoom.
James is recommending Shaping the Parish.
Correct. Similar models to congregational development, but just a little different.
Yep, $60 on Zoom, so affordable. Great, thank you. I'm aware that we have communities that are really, really small, and when young families show up into those places, they feel very vulnerable and exposed. And so that is a place that has my heart. And we're just going to do our best to work with those communities to figure out how they transition from maybe 7 people who don't know how to welcome a family or over welcome a family to some other scenario. Because it's just embarrassing. It's just, there's a lot of feelings in it, and we need to get off the feelings wheel and into just being some practical realities of how we welcome people. I like feelings. I don't mean to be like anti-feeling. I have a lot of them. I'm having a bunch right now. They just can't drive the bus because they can't. Sometimes they can. Love should always drive the bus, but it is also more than a feeling, right? I want to talk about money. Who loves talking about money? That's why I went to seminary, so I could talk about money all the time. This last Sunday, my first visitation was at Church of the Good Shepherd over in Kansas City, and I had a fantastic time with them. We had a couple confirmations, some receptions, reaffirmations, a wonderful reception downstairs, and a question and answer time. That was lovely. And we talked about all kinds of things. Are we going to start planning churches? How are we going to resource our smallest communities? All those things, right? And I said this to them, and so you just need to know, I'm going to say it when I come to your places. These are the words that are going to come out of my mouth at some point. I'm going to challenge every member of the diocese to raise their pledge by 1%. Now, 1%, y'all, 1%. That is like nothing, right? But if I come in and I say, I want you to raise your pledge by 10%, people are going to run me out with a pitchfork, right? So I'm starting at 1%. And if someone says to me, that's not enough, I'm going to say, great, the Lord is calling you to raise your pledge more. What is the right percentage for you? Right? And then you do. So people have got to start raising their pledges. If we're going to do any of the things that we hope to do as a diocese, it starts at a local level with people raising their pledges. And I'm not going to ask you to do that first. I'm going to do it. Right? Why am I asking people to raise their pledge? Because we need to be moving diocesan resources more and more into a local level. We want to plant churches. We can't expect the communities to have the dollars to plant the churches. We as a diocese need the dollars in order to plant the churches. Now we have some funds to be able to do that. I don't know enough about them yet. Learning. Let's say I've been on the job for 3 months. How's that, right? Not 3 days, 3 months. Still trying to figure out what all these funds are for and what they mean. And we've got to be able to get into local communities and source them so that they have a greater confidence about their ministry. Jonathan's calling me.
Well, no, sorry. I was wondering how that app worked with extension, but
It worked. I have a verified Jonathan Fraser missed call.
I didn't even put in the extension. It just went straight through. So.
Well, that number works. Yay! Thanks, Jonathan. Great. Okay. So now let's talk about the other thing I'm going to tell all of our congregations is planned giving. And that people should be planning to leave money to their churches, both restricted and unrestricted. We're on the edge of a massive wealth transfer, right? And if people love their churches and they want to be buried, people have said to me, I'll keep this church open so that I can be buried from here. Great. I look forward to seeing how our name is in your estate. Right? So, planned giving, restricted, we need restricted gifts, right? Because we have, in my experience, boilers and chillers and roofs and gutters and property that needs to be maintained. Now, to some degree, those restricted gifts restrict us to the building. And I get it, that's not always great. So we're just going to hold that with grace and flexibility and adaptability, right? Which is why we need people to give unrestricted gifts so that we can be liberated for mission and ministry. When I started at St. Michael and Angels, we went through the restricted funds that had been given to youth ministry. And my favorite one was the $1,200 gift that was given for an ice cream truck. That was going to be outreach ministry that the youth were going to run. Have you ever, I don't know if you've ever worked with teenagers before. We don't want them running an ice cream truck. So we had to do the hard work of unraveling that gift, right? Where did it come from? Who gave it? Can we, I want to help you with that. We as a diocese can help unravel some of those restricted gifts, but also I'm just going to flat out ask people to give us money without restrictions so that we can, because I want them to trust us, right? I want them to trust that we love Jesus the most. And because we love Jesus the most, that is the core value that we're going to carry out in our communities, which means we're going to use our money to spread the gospel. Now that terrifies some people because they think when I say spread the gospel, they think that means we're going to stand on the corner with like those boards, what are they called? Oh, right. And Jesus loves you and come to my church. That's not what I mean. We're going to have a strategy. We're going to have a plan. I don't have a strategy yet. I don't have a plan yet. It's coming. We will develop that strategy and that plan together. But to even develop a strategy and a plan, we got to have some money. Now we have some money already. So we're going to earn some trust by being wise about how we spend our money. And we're going to ask people to give us just a little bit more, right? And that will hopefully begin to translate into a greater culture of generosity. And if you feel uncomfortable talking about money and asking people to give you money, would you let some of us know about that so that we can support you? And we have a plan, and Ryan or Isaac is going to help me talk about it to support you in asking for money. Who wants to do it? Quick.
So in spring of 26, that's as specific as we can be at the moment. Spring of 26, 3 of us from the Stewardship Commission will be having a special, be likely an overnight, so an evening and most of the following day, time for the clergy to gather, primarily rectors who are overseeing congregations or priests in charge at that point, but not exclusively, but that's kind of where we're honing in. Have a really deep, honest, hard conversation around how do we, in our contexts, in their similar and dissimilar ways, practically ask people for money. And some of this stems from a survey some of you helped us with a couple of years ago on the Stewardship Commission, in which more than half of the clergy of the diocese said they were unwilling or either unwilling or didn't feel like they had enough information to even know how to ask for money. And so if our clergy aren't able to talk about money as a stewardship and faithful practice, how are the rest of us going to do that? So spring of 26, be looking for more information on that soon.
Thank you. The last priority I want to talk about, so that we have a little bit of time. I know there was a question about the Deacon's Mass in the chat. There's probably other questions that have popped up. So before we jump into that, I want to talk a little bit about systemic health. If you paid attention at the meet and greets, you know that systemic health is really, really important to me. And that I know that starts with me. And so if I can help you learn about or know about or have some vehicles by which we can continue to grow the larger health of the system, I hope you will mark that in your brain and let me know later that that's something that's important to you. I am on purpose not using the words family systems because I know that has kind of been overdone around here. And systemic health is greater than just one way of thinking about systemic health. And we will be talking about it, right? We'll be talking about how I am going to depend on you to be the calmest person in your community. And you're not going to always feel calm, right? Because hard things are going to happen, right? And I will help you. I commit to you right now. I'm not going to always be able to do it. I'm going to try really hard, but I'm committed to being the calmest person in the diocese Because I have resources for people that I can call and be like, you are not gonna believe what just happened today, right? They're not gonna be they're not in the room right now. Because it has to leave the system. It has to go all the way out. So I'm also asking that of you, right? When we talk about having a spiritual director or having a therapist or having a coach or having a friend group, I'm asking you to find someone outside of your system that you can call and say, you are not going to believe what happened to me today, right? And you can also call me. So I'm the one exception to that rule, right? Because I'm in your system because I'm in the diocese, but I'm not in your parish. But hopefully I know your people in your parish well enough to be able to receive whatever you're telling me about them so that we can resource and find help, if particularly in really high anxiety situations. May I give you an example? Okay. I had a parishioner at a parish I served, and somehow he got my cell phone number. And his favorite thing to do was to text me at about 11 o'clock at night after he'd been drinking about all the horrible things about me. All of them. And, I did all the things. I couldn't block his number. I suppose I could have, right? But I felt like in order to do that, I needed to have a lot. I was going to have to expose him to a lot of people. And I feel like that was pastorally the right thing to do. My bishop knew. So I started screenshotting these texts and sharing them with my bishop so that he knew what was going on. And then I spent a lot of time in therapy, figuring out how to best respond to him. And so that's an example to me of how you take that experience outside your system to get the help you need to be able to respond to something that's inside the system, right? Because he's still in that system. I'm gone. I've been gone, right? He's still there, and likely he's found a new target, right? And so the bishop needs to know, and the staff need to know, and have expectations around that kind of behavior, right? We're not going to change him, and we're going to love him, and we're going to do our best to create really healthy boundaries around that for the sake of the gospel, if you will. I'm not saying I did it right. I'm not saying there weren't mistakes, right? I'm saying it's just part of our reality, right? So systemic health, ask for help, be the calmest person in the room. You can't be the calmest person in the room, call me or find somebody else outside the system who can help you do that work. Okay. There was a question about deacon's mass. Am I going to allow deacon's mass? I'm not going to change a policy for a year. Do we know what all the policies are? We do not. That is clear. So my next right thing is finding the policies, getting them, and making sure you have them, and writing you a pastoral letter about the process so that you can follow the policies. Let's do that, and then we'll revisit what changes might be coming. Okay? Let's see, what else is in that chat? That might have been it. Yes, I'm asking pledges to be raised by 1% or by a 1 percentage point. What's the difference? I don't know what the difference is. Just what? From 4% to 5%, or from 4% to 4%? I just raised the pledge. I mean, we're going to do it 4%. It doesn't, yeah, there's no specific number, but it has to be, you have to start somewhere. That's the end of it. Oh, Ryan says, I'm sorry, my mic doesn't work. That's relatable. It's happened to me before. What else? What did we not talk about that you were hoping I was going to talk about? I get nervous when I don't have anything.
Bishop, I'm Jerry Miller. I used to be rector here, and then I've been at Trinity Medicine for 13 years as the priest in charge. I'm also chaplain to the retired clergy spouse community. And the previous bishop, transitional,
Bishop Provisional was very good at meeting. My wife and I were hosted at our house. We lived here in Springfield. And she went out of her way to not affirm us because we don't meet there. We all have pretty big egos. But the value and the contributions we were still making to the diocese. And one of her policies, and it may have existed before, and I think it's a great policy, is if you're age 72 or older and still in charge of a congregation, each year the bishop reviews that as a target. And I hope you continue that policy because it protects everyone, especially the priest if he wants to quit. So I'm not saying I'm going to quit.
Did y'all know that Jerry has an anniversary this year?
It'll be 50th ordination on Feast of St. Ignatius on October 17th.
October 17th.
Bishop was able to meet with the group when
I
she was in the, as she come on like a Saturday morning. And I realized that, especially this summer, you have a lot going on. At some point, we would certainly welcome you in the southern being here, meet with the spouses. And that we will certainly follow your lead because there's no expectation that once you retire that you can go on forever. But anyway, there just is a long history of retired clergy assisting in ways that are important.
Thank you. So for those of you who couldn't hear what Jerry was saying, he's asking about the ongoing relationship with the retired clergy, particularly those who are 72 or older, and reviewing their commitment in ministry every year. Thank you for that, Jerry. I'm going to do my best. I'm probably going to make some mistakes, and I hope that you will help me learn from those. One of the things that I really admire about Diane is her capacity to hold a lot at the same time. She has this incredible capacity to hold all kinds of pastoral information right at the front of her mind and brain, and really be able to draw on that really quickly. I don't know that I have that. I'm going to really try really hard. And I'm asking this community, the community of the clergy, to set the example of asking for what you need. So you've asked for that. Please continue that policy. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't continue to do that. And when I grow forgetful, because I might, will you help me remember, please? And if you feel neglected, or you feel like you haven't heard from your bishop, and so she must not like you, she probably likes the other priest better, because she was just there, right? And it's too bad she doesn't like me because I'm so great, which you are. I hope that you will just call me and say, I miss you. Can we please go have lunch? Because you know what? I'll be like, yes, please. That sounds like a lot of fun. Because I can't think of any one person right now. I mean, this could change based on your behavior. But right now, I mean, I think you guys are all pretty great. And I'm just so glad that you would want to have lunch with me, or coffee, or a Zoom call, or whatever the thing is, right? So just if you find yourself in that space of the bishop has forgotten us, which is so easy to fall into, right? Because we have a vocation that isolates us and invites us into loneliness. And we have a culture that promotes anxiety and fear. And so it gets really, really easy to think that those are the stories, that the story we're telling ourselves is the story, that there is no other story. And the only way to get out of that narrative is to invite someone else in. And I hope that you will invite me in. So like, I have October 17th on my calendar, Jerry. Like, that's a really, really important day in the life of our church, in the life of our community. And then like the 51st year is gonna come up, and that may not be in my calendar, right? But yet we will still be in a relationship with one another, and I may need you to say to me, hey, Amy, don't forget it's the 51st year. And I'll be like, that's amazing, let's go have lunch, it's so exciting, right? I don't want to dwell on this any more than necessary. I'll pick on my own self. My husband is really great at buying everybody else in his family birthday presents, except for me. We were married for 26 years. He never buys me a birthday present. Have I been asking for a birthday present for 26 years? I'm an only child. I've been asking for birthday presents for 26 years. And every year he says to me, well, I see you every day. I mean, it's just the way his brain works, right? He doesn't see his mom every day, and so he like wants to send her a gift because he wants her to know he remembers her, right? And that's my point, is that we're all of our brains work differently in terms of how we understand how the relationship works, and how I understand a relationship works might be different from how you understand it. But it doesn't mean I don't want to be in a relationship with you and that I don't value you. So if you're not getting what you need, you have the right to ask for what you need. Please ask, and then we'll figure out how to move forward. Which is what we were doing, Jerry. Thank you. Jose.
For the PNG, the Kansas City area, they expect to establish ministry there. And I work in missionary for the diocese, but I have congregation. Nicolas and Lawrence, the church Spanish service. That is a difficult for me going to Kansas City, stay there and serve there. The expectation is the churches, I think, the church for some churches around them open for the Spanish ministry. I spoke to Father Daniel. He's all Kansas City, Kansas, but he said he's very open to solidate the lives and the leaders of others. I know that is difficult, but we don't have the budget for the employing one person in Kansas City, but they expect all the something.
I agree. So Canon Palma is asking about the future of Hispanic ministry, particularly in Kansas City. And I agree that we have a great need for that. And so my hope is that we'll have an answer to that in the next 6 months, in some capacity, to be able to relieve your burden and also grow ministry in an area that is just bursting for that attention. So yes, it is a priority for me. Thank you for bringing it up. Did you hear me speak Spanish in the conversation? Somebody told me they had for whatever reason, you were in their line of sight, and then I started speaking Spanish, and then you were. I figured if I said it really, really fast, no one would know if I did it right. And you would just be like, you carry a huge burden, Canon Palma, being the one among us who is always having to speak that need. Thank you for continuing to do so. And hopefully we'll have some relief in the near future. Thank you. What else? Okay, well, lunch, it looks like it's here. I think it's going to be ready probably in the next 15 minutes or so. After lunch at about 1 o'clock, we're going to move into the nave, the sanctuary, and we're going to have Eucharist with one another. Those of us who are here, you all are about to have the rest of your life back to yourselves. Thank you for being here online. Oh, the Eucharist will be live streamed. Listen to Renee, she's taking care of us today. Ron and I have been planning a service together, really great, mainly the people of St. John's have been working really hard and sending me text messages and saying, is it okay if we do this? And I'm like, yes, that's great. Again, I'm not a detail person. I'm like, let's have Eucharist. Somebody else takes care of it. It's great. So Ron is going to be our preacher today. He's got some readings that he's chosen that he has. And so if you're willing to be a reader, would you go talk to, so there's only two. So, there'll be a line probably in front of Ron. People are anxious to assist.
Here.
Yeah.
We're gonna have two volunteers.
Yeah, someone to lead the prayers of the people. That'd be great. And then,
If I may, show of hands, those who might wish to, we're gonna have gluten-free communion.
anybody need gluten-free? Great. All right. Maybe that's all. Yeah, we're gonna do that. I got that. Thanks, Joe. All right. November 16th. I'm not telling you that. I'm older than you think I am. That's my little party trick. All right. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Let's pray. Most gracious God, I am so grateful that in our busy, busy world, as people all around us are working and moving and doing their best, that we are able to set aside this time to be together, to be in your presence, and to seek your will as we come closer to one another. I pray that you will continue to make yourself known to us in this food that's provided for us, and our time later as we worship, and in the days and the weeks, the months and the years to come, and that we will remember that you are the one who draws us to each other. In this time, bless this food to our use, that we may find ourselves strengthened, encouraged, and ready for whatever comes next. Keep us mindful of the needs of others and responsive with gratitude to all that we receive. And so I offer us to your service in the glory of your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Thanks, y'all.